For Eric J on Sports, I'm Eric J, and this is what I think. I've always been amused by NFL mock drafts halfway through the season or a quarter of the way through the season when some sports writer will decide, hey, based on the records that the teams have now, let's see who they're going to pick in next year's draft, when you don't really know what's going to happen. In 2009, the San Diego Chargers started out the season at 2-3, so every mock draft that came up at the beginning of the season had the San Diego Chargers picking early in the draft because they were one of the worst teams in football. But all the Chargers did was reel off an 11-game winning streak, finished the season 13-3, and made the playoffs. So every mock draft had them picking early in the draft, and then all of a sudden, San Diego's picking at the bottom of the first round, so whatever player the mock drafts early in the season had them selecting was already gone by the time the Chargers select. And that's not even the biggest issue with the mock drafts. The thing about the mock drafts is you can't really predict which players are going to come out early. You can't really predict which players are going to stay in college. And you don't really know what's going to happen with the teams. I recently saw one mock draft where they were only predicting the first round of the draft, but the draft had the Las Vegas Raiders making a trade with the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears were going to send the Raiders Justin Fields, and the Raiders were going to give the Bears their 43rd pick in the second round and some other draft picks later in future years and things like that. And I saw that and I thought, well, how does that even make sense? Because if you look at Justin Fields is an athletic quarterback. He moves around a lot. He can run. He can throw some. He makes a lot of mistakes. And for him to come to the Raiders would depend on a couple of factors. And the biggest factor is nobody knows who the coach is going to be next season for the Raiders. Nobody knows who's going to be in charge. Is it going to be Antonio Pierce? Is it going to be Jim Harbaugh? Is it going to be Frank Reich? Is it going to be someone else? And that would go a long way to determining whether or not a trade like this even is valid or viable, because there are some coaches who won't want a Justin Fields, and there are some coaches who will. The last two full-time head coaches that the Raiders had, John Gruden and Josh McDaniels, don't really care much for mobile quarterbacks. They prefer the standard pocket passers. They prefer quarterbacks who drop back, survey the field, throw the ball short. 10-yard outs, 5-yard outs, 10-yard hitches, 5-yard hitches. They prefer a lot of stuff to the sideline, not a lot of stuff over the middle. Quarterback stands there behind a staunch offensive line and makes decisions and throws the ball. They don't really want their quarterback doing a lot of running, going out there, putting his body on the line and getting injured. So if you end up with another coach like John Gruden or like Josh McDaniels, then having a quarterback like Justin Fields would be foolish for the Raiders, because that quarterback won't fit into the system or the style of play that the new coach wants to use. But they may also keep Antonio Pierce, or they may also get another coach who is into modern football, and then Justin Fields would be a perfect quarterback, except for the fact that Justin Fields seems a little immature and makes a lot of mistakes. And if you get a coach like Jim Harbaugh, he's not going to want a quarterback who makes a lot of mistakes and is immature. So Justin Fields wouldn't be the ideal quarterback for a Jim Harbaugh-led Raider team either. So before you can start doing mock drafts and figuring out who's going to come out in the draft, which players are going to be available, which juniors or sophomores are going to leave college early to go to the NFL, and which juniors and seniors are going to stay and play one more year because they have one more year of eligibility so they can make one more year of NIL money, before you can even figure out that, you need all of the details, you need all of the facts. And the facts include all of these teams like Washington, like New England, like the Chargers, like the Giants, like the Jets, like the Raiders. All of these teams have to figure out their coaching situation. And then once you figure out the coaching situation, then you can figure out what type of quarterback or what type of players that coach likes. Is that coach going to want to strip the whole team bare and bring in a whole new crew of guys? Or is that coach going to want to stick with the players that are there and just build from what they already have? Once you know these kind of things, then you can put together a mock draft. Then you can say, oh yeah, the Raiders are going to draft so-and-so in the first round because they need it. Because see, this draft that I saw, the one where the Raiders are trading for Justin Fields, ends up being that the Raiders don't draft a quarterback in the first round. There's about 5 or 6 viable first-round quarterbacks that should be available in the upcoming draft. But the Raiders now don't draft one because they have Justin Fields. And that would be a mistake, because whether you have Justin Fields or not, you're going to need a backup quarterback. And yeah, you could say, okay, we have Aiden O'Connell and we could grab another guy in the second, third, fourth round. He can be our backup quarterback. We'll be fine. But what if Justin Fields get hurt, which he is prone to doing? What if Justin Fields get himself benched because he makes too many mistakes? Or what if he gets himself cut because whoever the coach is just doesn't like his style of play? Then you've got a second, third, fourth round quarterback that you've drafted who's a rookie that doesn't have any experience. And then you have a fourth round Aiden O'Connell who's going to have about 10 games of experience, but he hasn't shown anything in those 10 games. So it makes sense to draft a quarterback in the first round. Even if you trade back to the 25th pick and draft late, it makes sense to draft a quarterback whether you have Justin Fields or not. But it also makes sense to wait and see who your coach is and what type of quarterback that coach wants. Because maybe he doesn't want an athlete like Caleb Williams or Bo Nix. Maybe he doesn't want an athlete like Justin Fields. Maybe he wants a standard pocket passer. Somebody from BYU, somebody from TCU, somebody from Idaho State. Maybe he wants a standard passer. And you may not be able to find one of those in the draft. You may have to go get one. You may have to sign Andy Dalton. You may have to sign Carson Wentz. You may have to sign one of these guys. But before you can start predicting what teams are going to do, you have to know who teams are and what teams are. And most of these mock drafts don't know who these teams are or what these teams are or what they're going to be. So I think, and I always have felt this way, that mock drafts are probably one of the dumbest things that sports writers do, but it's fun. You can predict what's going to happen. You can predict who's going to do what. It's like watching anything else. You watch basketball, you predict the winner. You watch football, you predict the winner. Everybody likes to bet on the outcomes. Everybody likes to bet the point spreads. Everybody likes to bet who's going to score first and all of these props. And one of the biggest props in the NFL is who's going to draft who, when, where in the next draft before the season is even over. Because what you don't know is Antonio Pierce might take the Raiders on a 5-game winning streak or a 6-game winning streak, and they finish this season 10-7. And then they're in the playoffs. So now their draft situation is not as tenuous. And maybe Aiden O'Connell has put together numbers that makes him an automatic choice to be the starter next year. So now do you want to bring in Justin Fields to kick Aiden O'Connell back to the bench when he's proved himself as a viable starter? Don't know. And since you don't know, maybe you should wait to find out before you start trying to predict who's going to do what and when. Remember to like and share this video and subscribe to this channel, and visit the new Eric J on Sports website, and follow me on Facebook at Eric J on Sports 1 and on Instagram and Twitter at Eric J on Sports. And for Eric J on Sports, I'm Eric J, and this is what I think.